Week 1 is officially in the books, and hopefully you started the season off 1-0. If not, there's still plenty of fantasy football to be played. Today, I'm bringing you my start-sit running backs going into Week 2 of the 2023 season. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get it straight into it. My first running back that you should be starting going into this week is Dameon Pierce versus the Indianapolis Colts. In Week 1, the Colts gave up the 7th most fantasy points to the running back position. Look, all this past week coming into Week 1, we were saying you should be sitting Dameon Pierce. As much as I love him, as much as I think he's going to be great moving forward, he was playing the Baltimore Ravens, who historically have a good run defense, just have a good defense as a whole. Not only that, they were starting their rookie quarterback in CJ Stroud, who was going to be struggling in the passing game, and we saw that happen as they were down often in this game. Dameon Pierce, 11 carries, 38 yards, averaging 3.5 carries per game. They lost to the Baltimore Ravens 25-9. Once again, they were down the majority of the time. But what's really encouraging when you think of Dameon Pierce in this workload and what we saw in Week 1 is the opportunities he got in the air specifically, okay? A lot of the conversations all season was that Dameon Pierce was going to see a lot of work in the air, right? I mean, I even said that. Zach said that. We were projecting that a lot coming into this year, especially with a rookie quarterback who was going to be struggling no matter where they got drafted in the NFL draft. But when you look into Week 1 in this stats here, Dameon Pierce, when you compare Dameon Pierce and Devin Singletary, you look at the snaps, route run, and targets. Clearly, Dameon Pierce led in every single category besides the one with targets, which surprisingly Mike Boone led that category with 4 targets. But when going back to the conversation with Devin Singletary, he was the guy that we all thought that was going to be taking opportunity away from Dameon Pierce, and that wasn't the case. I mean, he was outsnapped by Mike Boone, right? 16 snaps, 5 route runs, and 0 targets. I think that is what is really interesting here, which makes me really excited, especially moving forward, because if this is the case with Devin Singletary, that means Dameon Pierce could be seeing a lot of work in the air going into the weeks ahead. So once again, Dameon Pierce going against the Indianapolis Colts, who they just played the Jacksonville Jaguars and just gave over 100 yards of scrimmage to Travis Etienne. This is another divisional game for this team. Dameon Pierce can easily see 60, 70 yards on the ground and a touchdown coming into Week 2. So he is my first must-start running back coming in. My second must-start running backs going into Week 2. Yes, 2 running backs is David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs versus the Seattle Seahawks. Look, this may be a given. This may be saying, well, this is kind of obvious, but I think a lot of people, especially in the fantasy community, Twitter, our comments, people are saying what to do with Jahmyr Gibbs. You know, is David Montgomery startable in Week 1? Because they kind of project these guys, Jahmyr Gibbs specifically, to work into David Montgomery's workload. I would say you need to start both of these guys moving forward, right? The Seattle Seahawks gave up the 8th most fantasy points to the running back position in Week 1. Let's look at Monty's workload in Week 1. 21 carries, ran in there for a touchdown, over 13 fantasy points. He looked good, and clearly was a first and second down guy and goal line guy when it comes down to this backfield. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs, who Week 1 performance was a little bit underwhelming, but what we saw with him in the opportunities was really exciting. And if you see this graphic on your screen, Jahmyr Gibbs only had 7 carries for 42 yards, averaging 6 yards per carry, versus David Montgomery's 21 carries and 74 yards, averaging 3.5, nearly double that for Jahmyr Gibbs, which is very interesting. That means how explosive he is. He was a top 12 draft pick in this past year's draft. Jahmyr Gibbs is easily going to start continually eating into David Montgomery's workload, but I think David Montgomery does have a safe floor. That's why I'm saying both of these guys are must starts going into the weeks. Once again, these guys are playing the Seattle Seahawks, who give us the 8th most fantasy points to the running back position, who last week in Week 1 they played the Los Angeles Rams, who had Kyren Williams and barely saw Cam Akers on the field, which was a bit annoying, to be completely honest. And they also have a terrible offensive line. That's why a lot of people were fading Matthew Stafford. We're fading Cam Akers because of the opportunities of Matthew Stafford getting sacked often again, okay? When you think of this opportunity, when you think of this team, this Detroit Lions team, who has significantly has a better offensive line, a top 5 projected offensive line coming into the 2023 season. David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs should easily eat coming into week 2. So they are my second must-start running backs of this week. Going into my third must-start running backs, and the guy that I love all offseason, and my guy, James Cook, baby, playing the Las Vegas Raiders, who currently give the 10th most fantasy points to the running back position. I've been raving about him all off season. I said he's my guy. I've been saying he can be a first, second down, third down role, and that's exactly what we saw in this backfield for James Cook. I love James Cook. Once again, he is my guy, but let's really break down this workload that we saw on Monday Night Football against the Jets. I did say you should be sitting James Cook. As much as I did love him, he was going against a top 5 defense in that Jets defense. Top, front 4 is ridiculous. The secondary is ridiculous for the Jets, and I think I'm not saying I was wrong, but James Cook kind of showed up, and I think it was pretty exciting. But let's look at this running back usage for James Cook and the Buffalo Bills here in the backfield. 41 plays for James Cook, right? Early down plays with Damian Harris, who was a big conversation coming into this year. Damian Harris is going to be the goal line guy, which we see here. Goal line guy, only 1 attempt, short yardage. James Cook, 2 out of 1 and 1 for Damian Harris and Latavius Murray. Surprisingly, third down work had significantly more than his peers, and then the 2-minute drill was Latavius Murray. But if you were watching that game, Latavius Murray was purely in that rotation for run blocking because how bad or how good this pass defense or pass rush for the Jets were getting to Josh Allen. So I think there's an asterisk in that fact. I think he was once again only there for pressured because they were getting pressured often by the run defense, right? But if you look at the snaps, if you look at the route runs, you look at the targets for James Cook, he led in snaps amongst the running back room. He led in route run amongst the running back room. He led in targets amongst the running back room, and he also led in carries amongst the running back room. I think a lot of people were saying, well, Dameon Pierce is getting a lot of workload. He's going to be the first and second down guy, where James Cook is only going to be the third down guy. I've always projected James Cook to be the first and second down guy. I did agree that Damian Harris will be the goal line guy, which is true. I'm okay with that, but he's get all the workload in the air. And once again, going against the Las Vegas Raiders, who just gave up the 10th most fantasy points to the running back position, especially with the Bills losing here in Monday Night Football, I think you have to believe and envision James Cook and this Buffalo Bills offense really taking the lead often, and James Cook getting a lot more carries on the ground in the second half of this game. So I'm starting James Cook going into week 2. Guys, before I get to my next player, my 4th player on this list, go to flogfantasy.com/land, the best place to support what Zach and I are doing here. You want Zach's weekly updated rankings that he's been putting out on our site. Once again, flogfantasy.com/land. All you have to do is sign up with promo code LAND. Zach's been putting his quarterbacks, wide receivers, tight end, defenses, running backs, all the above on their weekly start sit rankings that he's been working hard on. So if you want to get that, please, once again, flogfantasy.com/land. Not only that, you can get a fantasy hotline set up with us and saying, hey, who should I start? Who should I sit? Who should I trade for this week? We all have that. And once again, flogfantasy.com/land. That best place to support what Zach and I are doing here. All right, let's get to my 4th guy here. Rachaad White versus the Bears. Okay, week 1, the Bears gave the 3rd most fantasy points to the running back position with a very underwhelming game for Rachaad White. He kind of makes for a good buy low/bounce back player in the week 2. Surprisingly, the Vikings did stuff Rachaad White often on the line of scrimmage. He only had 3.8 yards per carry, but now he's going back to Tampa, and he's going to be playing the Bears, who just gave him, once again, the 3rd most fantasy points to the running back position. There's no doubt that Rachaad White is leading this backfield with attempts on the ground and in the air. Sean Tucker is nowhere to be found. Neither is Chase Edmonds. This team, you kind of have to envision them playing from behind often, especially with going against Justin Fields, who just also came off a loss. You'd think both of these teams are going to be fighting for something here. I think Rachaad White can easily get enough workload in the air. So once again, Running back position, he led the running back position in every category. They just need to execute the run game. More targets in the air will come for Rachaad White. That one was short and sweet. Let's go to my 5th must-start running backs of this list. Yes, running backs, another group of running backs, and that is Ramondre Stevenson and Ezekiel Elliott. Going against the Miami Dolphins in this week, and Miami Dolphins Miami Dolphins last week in week 1 gave up the 2nd most fantasy points to the running back position. Now, when you look at this offense in this running back room, you know, I think this is going to be leading to a split backfield, but specifically Ramondre Stevenson in the air and Ezekiel Elliott on the ground. Now, I really want to show you this graphic here, because it really breaks it down really well, right? All plays, you see Ramondre Stevenson is still leading with 48 snaps. Early downs is still Ramondre Stevenson with Zeke with 10. Goal line opportunities, which was only one in this game. Zeke had 1 goal line opportunity. Short yardage for both of these running backs. English is hard. Been prepping all day for you guys. With both Zeke and Ramondre Stevenson only had 1 attempt when they were both on the field. 3rd downs, clearly Ramondre Stevenson has led that. And then 2-minute drill where this team is trying to drive down the field, whether it's in the 4th quarter, 3rd quarter, 2nd, whatever the quarter it may be, Ramondre Stevenson is in that time, 19 carries to 1. So look, Ramondre Stevenson is getting the work specifically in the air, which I like. But let's really hone in once again on focus on Ramondre Stevenson even more. Let's look at the snaps, route runs, targets, and carries versus Ezekiel Elliott. You can see the graphic on your screen. 58 snaps versus 28 to Zeke. Routes run 35 versus 18 to Zeke. Targets 6 and to 5 to Zeke. So they're really close in targets, and carries 12 to 7. What's really significant here is how many route runs Ramondre Stevenson had. And this week, he led the NFL amongst running backs in routes run per running back, where you can see here 34 receiving routes or routes run that he ran in week 1. That was ahead of Christian McCaffrey, James Cook, Alexander Madison, Travis Etienne, all these guys that we kind of expected to run, you know, be pass catching backs and get a lot of opportunity. So this is really exciting to see Ramondre Stevenson still getting the work, still having the opportunity with Ezekiel Elliott there. But don't get me wrong, Zeke does have standalone value depending on your league. If you're in a 10-man league, and Zeke could easily get a good workload on the goal line, especially versus this New England defense, who is good. And we didn't see them, have him carry the ball in. But once again, he's playing the Miami Dolphins, who just had a shootout. And we saw Austin Eckler punch the ball in a couple times, or Austin Eckler and Joshua Kelly. That can easily be Ezekiel Elliott and or Ramondre Stevenson going into week 2. So that's exactly why both of these guys are a must-start going into this week. And my last must-start running back for this video so far, before we get into my sit running backs, Jamal Williams versus the Carolina Panthers. A Monday Night Football game, one that I really like. And you really think about it, the Panthers gave the most points to the running back position in week 1. Last week, Jamal Williams had a terrible game against the Tennessee Titans, who gave up the least amount of fantasy points to the running back position. Now he's going to be playing the Panthers, who give up the most fantasy points to the running back position, which is really exciting. And that's exactly where I kind of want to hone in on. This past week, the Panthers allowed both Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson to finish as a top 7 running backs in week 1, which is absolutely crazy. No one expected that for Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson. We kind of expected, but not Tyler Algier, okay? So even though Jamal had a terrible week, and we are also still unclear if Kendre Miller is going to be ready for week 2, and if he's not, I mean, he does have an extra day to practice, to be completely honest, but if he's not, Jamal Williams is easily going to be the lead back here, because Alvin Kamara is still suspended. He will be back in week 4. When you look at this snap count, these opportunities here for Jamal Williams, 49 snaps, 24 route runs, 2 targets, which is a little bit underwhelming, and then 18 carries, which I'm okay with, and he can easily find the end zone if this trend continues for the Carolina Panthers to be giving up the most fantasy points to the running back position. So those are all my start running backs. Let's get straight into my sit running backs here. Brian Robinson, my first sit running back is Brian Robinson versus the Denver Broncos. In week 1, the Broncos gave up the 3rd fewest fantasy points to the running back position. And that is something that I really want to bring up here, right? Look, Brian Robinson this past week, in week 1, his only catch in the air this past week was in the end zone, which salvaged his fantasy finish, where he did finish as a top 15 running back, where the Denver Broncos, who just played the Las Vegas Raiders, held Josh Jacobs to 19 carries, 48 yards, and under 10 fantasy points. Clearly, we can all agree that Josh Jacobs is a significantly better running back than obviously Brian Robinson, and that's exactly why I want to avoid Brian Robinson coming into this week once again versus a really strong Denver Broncos defense. So he's my first must-sit guy. My second must-sit running back of this week is Raheem Mostert versus the New England Patriots. The Patriots currently give up the 10th fewest points to the running back position, and this is not something that I'm really excited about with the Dolphins, right? You think of this team and you think of Raheem Mostert and you say, okay, well, he just had a good game. They just had a massive shootout. What was his targets? 1 target? Out of the, what was it, 34 plus points each that they were going back and forth with, the massive shootout, the game of the week. We all projected this is going to be a must-start team. Like, everyone, you want a piece of the pie here. That wasn't the case for Raheem Mostert. He did play all the snaps with 46. He had this, I think, second, third most highest snap count amongst running backs here. 28 routes, second to third most highest routes run, not snaps, amongst running backs in week 1. And then 10 carries, only 10 carries for a team that was going back and forth, that needed to run the ball significantly and just didn't. 10 carries on the ground, 1 target. And now he is going to be playing the New England Patriots, who just gave the 10th fewest fantasy points to the running back position. I'm not necessarily sure if I want to be rocking with that coming in. Yes, they did play the Philadelphia Eagles, who didn't have the best run game options with Kenneth Gainwell, et cetera, et cetera. I just want to be avoiding Raheem Mostert coming into week 2. And my last must-sit player coming into week 2 is Alexander Mattison versus the Eagles. The Eagles currently give up the 11th fewest fantasy points to the running back position. And when you look at the Minnesota Vikings and what Alexander Mattison did in week 1 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who surprisingly had a good defense, they really showed up and did their thing. I'm not necessarily sure if I love what I saw from Mattison. Only 11 carries, 47 snaps, 26 route runs, and 4 targets. This is what's interesting. You think of Dalvin Cook and what he was doing this past year with the with the Minnesota Vikings, and you're saying, well, he's going to pick up that workload. He's going to be this guy. He's going to be getting 18 plus carries on the ground. He's going to be getting, 6 to 7 targets in the air. I mean, he had 11 carries on the ground and 4 targets. I don't see how that is somebody that is taking. I mean, look, to be fair, he did find the end zone, so that really helped his week. But take that touchdown away. Alexander Mattison is a running back that finished outside the top 30. Okay, I just don't know if I want to be starting Alexander Mattison this week, specifically against the Eagles, who we saw demolished this team last year in week 2, if I'm not mistaken, or week 1 on Thursday Night Football. In last year's game, I think it could pick up where they left off, especially with the Eagles, who just struggled on defense and they want to make a stance, especially back in Philly. So once again, Raheem Mostert, Brian Robinson, and Alexander Mattison are my must-sits of this week. And guys, here I want to bring some running backs that I believe could really be sneaky trap plays, specifically guys that I know you're probably saying, well, should I start him? Should I not start him? Or what should I do? First guy is James Conner versus the Giants. I'm a Giants fan, and maybe this come out a little biased, but I think what you saw this past week is complete fluke. That's not who we are. We do have a good defense. We have one of the projected top 10 defenses coming into the NFL, and we just didn't show that, unfortunately, and they scored 40 points. So should you start James Conner? I think you should, but I think it could be a trap, so definitely be prepared to not have the best game. Kyren Williams, who just had a phenomenal game, was a top running back this past week. He's playing the San Francisco 49ers. Do I want to start Kyren Williams versus the San Francisco 49ers? Absolutely not. If you really look at it, what he did in 15 carries, 52 yards, his day was really saved by the 2 touchdowns there. So I want to avoid Kyren Williams at all costs. And AJ Dillon, we don't know the severity of Aaron Jones. Maybe by the time you see this video, watch this video, we understand what that is. But I am not starting AJ Dillon versus the Atlanta Falcons. I don't want to. I'll be completely honest with you. I do not want to start AJ Dillon whatsoever. I think there are better options. So please, if Aaron Jones is out, I don't think AJ Dillon is the right move coming into week 2. And the next one is Isaiah Pacheco. I think this is also a trap as well. Obviously, the Kansas City Chiefs is going to be bouncing back. And if Travis Kelce is healthy, best believe we are peppering Travis Kelce every single play, and he is going to, the Chiefs are going to make a statement coming in here. So I don't know if Isaiah Pacheco is the one that's going to be making this statement. Maybe it's more Jet McKinnon, Travis Kelce, and the rest of the crew. But those are some honorable mentions of people that I'm trying to avoid. I guess people that I'm also sitting if I have options coming into week 2. Guys, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. We're going to be answering every single comment in the description or in the down below. So make sure, once again, you drop your start sit questions, drop any questions that you have, start sit, fantasy questions, trade questions, whatever you have, we'll get straight to it. And as always, it's all love.
Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy, even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.